Okay. Welcome everybody to the North Bay EAA October 2021 meeting. We have a short agenda and we'll have a discussion as we go through here as well for the club. We don't have a speaker today. And actually it was Cecilia's idea that we have a discussion on what do you say to non-EV drivers? I tend to say the wrong things. So we'll see how that works out. Okay, let's start with introductions, who you are and how you get around. Mark, you're on my screen at the upper left-hand corner.
Mark Brumbaugh. Still have my 2013 RAV4, works great. It's an EV.
I'm next on my screen too, and I'm Jerry Glazer, current president of NBEAA. Sonia will take over the reins in March, I think, or April. And I'm driving a 2018 Leaf. And as we go through the presentation, I'll tell you about my investigations of a new car and what that looks like. David Heacock.
Hi, I'm David Heacock. I live in Fairfield. I'm driving my 1985 Avani conversion. John and I have been kind of working together along with my brother. It has a quirk in the system, and I've determined with probably a 99% plus accuracy that it's a microwave tower, a communications tower.
What does a quirk in the system mean, David?
Well, let's just say the car shuts off.
Oh, that's a definite quirk.
You go to push the throttle down and there's nothing, and then all of a sudden it jerks, and then there's nothing and it jerks. And it's happened in a number of different spots, and I've been able to sort of triangulate it, and I found a big microwave tower that is camouflaged as a tree. It's a huge tower. And we're still trying to figure out what component it affects, but what I'm speculating right now, because my car is fiberglass, this might not happen with other cars that you might convert that have, metal shell and a hood and stuff. So, because it goes right through so I'm learning about microwaves, just haven't figured out how to fix it. But I can actually pull up to a certain spot on a street here and drive very slowly and get it to start doing it as I get just adjacent to the tower. So I don't know what somebody asked me about Teslas the other day of why wouldn't they have a problem? And I guess the question is, all these new cars, they must have shielding or something. I don't know, because Tesla's carbon fiber, isn't it? I don't know.
Dave, I think there's tin foil in your future.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's a lot of tinfoil under the hood right now, but it's not working. So anyway, I did drive at 100 on the current battery system that I just installed. I drove at 115 miles, and I only supposedly used 32 kilowatt hours. So I have 8 extra. So it looks like I'm going to get my 120 mile range pretty easily.
Say, Dave, there's a lot more stuff on those towers besides simply microwave. Basically, it looks like a tree. It's a cell tower, and they hang a lot of different things on cell towers. And microwave is usually, very highly directional. It is, it is transmitting between two towers, with the microwave, pointed directly at the tower that it's sending to. So how it would radiate out is curious.
Yeah, it's interesting because where it happens, it looks like if I hide behind a building or on the other side of a building, it doesn't happen. But if I'm line of sight, even probably half a mile to a mile away on the freeway, I can feel it jerk, and I know something's going on. So it seems like it's line of sight.
Oh,
But if anybody has any ideas, I just looked at this on the internet and said Faraday fabric, which protects against cell towers, and it has a range of 10 megahertz to like 56 or something megahertz, which this tower, according to the warning on the tower, says may exceed FCC regulation things. So could be doing that. I don't know. I'm looking for some help though, I guess, or ideas.
All right. John, you're next on my screen.
Yeah, that's interesting, Dave. It just reminds me of people walking around with tinfoil on their head for their, cell phone stuff. But anyway, I drive a what is it, a 94 Geo Metro, and it's been converted with a Nissan Leaf, as many of you know. It gets about 180 miles range if I push it, so that's really cool. Probably going to take all the parts out and put it in my truck soon so I can get a truck back, and that'll be a little set.
Okay. Lowell, you're up.
Wow.
You're on the mute. You're on mute. You put yourself on.
Sorry. Okay, back off mute. I drive a 2014 Tesla Model S and a 2013 Leaf. Yes, the Tesla is about to arrive at its 7th birthday. It's in great shape and running very well. And not much more to say about that.
Okay.
Mhm.
David Harris.
Okay, unmuting. We have a 2020 Leaf, which is our 4th Leaf on lease. And I bought a Bolt back in 2018. So we're dealing with the recall on the Bolts. The direction from Chevrolet was to set it on hilltop mode. And there was no hilltop mode in my car. It was supposed to be in there. And I took it to the dealer and I said, show me where it is. I can't find it. They couldn't find it either. But they did the software update, which is the first recall, and we're all still waiting for the fix for the batteries. But the software update did put Hilltop Reserve in the settings. It was actually not there, and nobody can explain just why there are versions of software that don't have it.
So what does Hilltop mode do that is going to prevent the batteries from exploding?
That's the workaround to not have it charged to 100%. The Hilltop Reserve means you're charging on a hill or at a higher elevation, and you don't want a full charge from the charging system because you're gonna leave and go downhill, and the regen is gonna give you charge that you wouldn't get if you charged to 100%.
Okay.
That's interesting. A friend of mine has a Bolt also, and he was told just to charge it to 90%, and he couldn't figure out where to go to set it to 90%. And
he probably has the same version of software that I did. It is not in there.
Okay, Mike, you're up next.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Newell, I'm not sure if my video is myself or the.
No,
That's you.
It's you. There you are.
Okay.
If you on a phone.
You're on a
Yeah,
phone,
I'm using my
right?
phone today.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've been back in the office every day for probably 3 months now and driving my 2011 Leaf. So it has plenty of range for 10 miles per day.
And that might be about it.
Yeah.
My 2011, when I gave it up, was at about 50 miles. That was too bad because that battery just was one generation too far back, and just 2 years later we see a big change. Caleb, you're up.
I don't go to the office, and I have a 2015 i3. I did drive it maybe a quarter mile this morning to get some Starbucks. So it does get out, and I have made some ground convincing my wife to drive it more often, because gas down here in Southern California is $5 a gallon. And
Aha.
that's been enough to convince her that, maybe we should drive the electric car with the kids around more often.
Yeah. well, It's $5.25 for the airplane. So and usually airplanes are $1 more. So if you're at $5, yeah.
Well,
forget
you have to put the Newport Beach tax on it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cecilia.
Hello, Cecilia. I have a 2018 Model 3, which I finally took in for service after 3 years for like the regular maintenance to make sure the car still goes. Only spent $50, so it's not bad. And I also got around with my feet a lot yesterday.
Your feet?
Yes. Got in maybe 9 miles. My legs are very tired. They don't have quite the same endurance as an EV. So
Well, you charge them up differently too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's all in how you charge it.
Sonia.
Everybody. I drive a 2019 Model 3, and I just went on a quick 2-day trip to Berkeley and Oakland, and visited some friends, one who has a Tesla, and I put 30 miles on it in the parking garage at Center Street parking garage in Berkeley, which now has 60 or 80 charging stations, in the first 3 decks of it. I've been using that garage for a really long time, and it had 4 when I had my 2012 Leaf, and so now it's got 80 of them, and I just bypassed the first 3 floors and parked on the top floors without any chargers for the couple of days, and then the last couple hours I went for a walk and got some steps, not that many, Cecilia, but I put 30 miles on it and called it a day. And I was staying overnight with a friend who has a Model Y, but that there's street parking. It was tight. It was in the Oakland Hills. I just put my car on the street, and I just saw, whenever I got into the kind of nicer upscale streets over there, I saw every 4th or 5th car was a Tesla. It was just amazingly saturated, and I don't get out much. Clearly, this was our first company meeting in a couple of years. So looking forward to our chat.
Okay. Okay, Bill, you're next.
Yeah. We still have Aretha, the Kia Soul 2016 model, and we're approaching 50,000 miles. And the car is still gorgeous and lovely and works great. And it's nice to have an electric vehicle.
You guys were talking about your stories of travel. I finally did the longest travel in my 2018 Leaf. And I traveled up to Tahoe in the Leaf. And when we get down to stories of how we talk to people about our vehicles, going up was easy, coming back was difficult, mainly because my phone stopped working. That's a different story. I have a new phone. Okay, let me get in the right place here. Chapter business. This hasn't changed. We have a number of members who have signed back up again and renewed their membership. I haven't seen anything from the from EAA about the name change. I was just thinking about how many things would be difficult for us if they have the name change and the charter stays the same, because our NBEAA name would no longer satisfy the charter. I don't know why they decided they need a name change. Still asking for news. Respond to the note that I'll send out either later today or tomorrow, saying send news items. We got less news items. David Harris, you always send me the news items one day before the meeting, which means they're going to go into the next meeting because I will finish the presentation. We need speakers. We have a speaker for December. We have somebody going on a road trip who wants to talk in December. We have nothing for next month either. But there's a lot of interesting topics in it requires doing some research. Sonia's done that before. Cecilia's done it before. Alan's done it before. We had Andy had done things just on home improvement and energy improvement. There's a lot more happening in batteries, and if somebody else wants to dig into batteries, I'd love to find the time for the new updates. It's almost exponential how fast battery technology is changing. We're going to see a lot of stuff shortly. And this was our last meeting. We had an open discussion on the shared EV truck. I don't know, we came up with a conclusion, and here are the links both for the video and for the presentation. We haven't yet returned to Thunderstruck. I didn't check the numbers this morning. We're at 11 cases per 100,000. Our target is 4 cases per 100,000. There's no county in the state of California at that level yet, but everybody has been moving down slowly. So we'll see what happens. But it'd be great to have the coffee and donuts. I miss the coffee and donuts. Help populate the new web page. Cecilia, jump in.
Yeah, I need your lovely photos for our website. So if you have some of your car, of like things you're doing with your car, please send them using the form so that we can get those ready for the website.
Bruce tried to send something in, and he sent me a note saying that the link I sent out didn't work, but something that Sonia said sent did work, and that he posted some pictures. Did you get those?
Oh, I have not checked.
Okay.
Recently.
But if I've screwed up, then you and I will construct another message and send it out so we can finally get the link there, so it's easier for people. This link here is live. I have tested it. It does work. If you pick up the presentation later on and click on the link, then you should be able to post your pictures.
The link you sent in the email didn't work, Jerry.
What happened was I forgot to put it in as a link. If you
Okay.
hit the HTTP blah, blah, blah,
Right.
that would work. And I'll send that back out again. I realized it after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I went and attended the NBEAA EV event. The turnout was low from my point of view. I'm used to turnouts in Cupertino where you have 500 people show up and lots of vehicles. I know the Gopal had expected 50 different vehicles to be there. I saw maybe 20, 18 of them were Teslas. And he was disappointed because all kinds of Teslas came in. There was one Kona. I'm very happy driver on their Kona. There were no Leafs except mine, but I didn't go to display. And there was VW brought one of the new i4s. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the last meeting, but I test drove the i4 and I was extremely disappointed. And when I went up to talk to the dealer that was there displaying as to what I was disappointed with, the one guy said, "Oh, no, talk to so-and-so there. You misunderstand. It does exactly those things." So then he was talking to somebody else who he was trying to sell to. And I said, "Well, you were going to ask these questions for me. How do I get into EV drive mode? And, one pedal drive, hill hold, and those kinds of features." And then he went on and explained why those were dangerous. And that Volkswagen, that Nissan and Tesla don't understand. He only mentioned those two companies. There are only two other companies selling electric vehicles, Nissan and Tesla. And that they don't understand, and hill hold and one pedal driving are very dangerous. And this is why Volkswagen decided not to include those.
That's a legacy vehicle salesperson that's been tossed into an EV salesperson role without any training. Exactly.
And that was what I ran into when I went to the Volkswagen dealership as well. And a really nice guy, Charles Orleans, did a great job, but he knew nothing about electric vehicles.
Yeah, I think that's the real challenge that conventional automakers are going to have in selling their cars is as long as they're selling them through their dealerships, they're going to have to do a massive training of those people or get new people that are, trained from the ground up.
Yeah, I find that's different with, I'm sorry to use the name, but Jim Bone, the guys are fairly good. Brent is okay. He doesn't know everything about his vehicle. Dan over at Kia knows a lot more about his vehicle. So that was kind of interesting to have the experience with them versus Volkswagen, where at a corporate level, I think they've thought a lot about this. I don't know why they programmed it this way. And it's a piece of software. They could have another mode called EV driver mode. I don't see a lot of EV drivers wanting to go buy a Volkswagen, even though it has all the functional capabilities, but the software just is not what I would appreciate.
I haven't dug into it, but I wonder if they have a different version of their software deployed in Europe than what they've deployed in the US. Because we've seen that before on other vehicles where they soften the transition for, the population of the US because of their expectation that the adoption will be higher if it's more focused on a traditional drivetrain than the actual EV drivetrain that's in it.
Yeah.
Something I'd be
I know
curious to
that
find out.
suspension differs per region. Like, in China, they like to have softer suspension
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
things like that.
Bill, you can jump in. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The one pedal driving option, I'm not familiar with that expression.
Oh,
Is
okay.
there
So
a quick explanation.
Yeah, on the Leaf and other vehicles, you push a button, and basically it changes the regen level to the point where regen becomes real braking. We did the same thing in the buses and trucks that Caleb and I worked on. They had a shifter, and if you shift it into one, it takes you really quickly to a stop at a stop sign. The other thing is when you take your foot off the pedal, with an older Leaf, it would still have creep. But with the newer vehicles, they stay still. And whether on a hill or wherever, they stay still. And that's the whole thing with the one pedal driving. You slow down, you take your foot all the way off the pedal, and then it stops. Now, the dealer who is selling said, yeah, but that efficiency, don't you want to coast? And I go, then you put your foot on the accelerator pedal a little bit and you'll coast. But that's what one pedal driving is.
So the Tesla I'm driving anyway, that's one of its user configurable features. You can configure it to either creep or not creep.
Yeah.
I've configured it to not creep. I really like that it just sits there when I get into a stoplight. It can take my foot off the pedal.
Yeah, and the Leaf does exactly the same thing. And I noticed when I take it into the dealership, they always turn that off. And I'm about to have an accident every time I leave because I take my foot off the accelerator and the car starts to creep into the one in front of me because the guy who maintains the vehicle goes, well, I can't drive it like this. Come on.
I have noticed a downside that the Tesla's protecting me with. Like, so if I come to a stop and it goes into hold mode, which is the equivalent of like you've kind of feathered the accelerator pedal down to nothing. You're kind of in a fixed position, and then it kind of engages the brake at that point, I assume, to just hold you in one position, even if you were on a hill. And in that position, sometimes I like look at my phone and I check where I am, and then I just open the door to leave, and the car says, hey, we engaged park for you because you didn't engage park. And engaging park in a Tesla is a really kind of a minor event because it's like pushing a little stem on the right side, which I don't like. Rather, it was like a more significant major event. But it doesn't, the safety of it seems like it's kind of compensating that way. So now I just have to remember to turn off cars that aren't Teslas. Stuff like that.
And by the way, likely it does not engage the brake. More likely what it does is it sets the controls on the motor. And so if it realizes it's rolling back, it's going to then have just enough to go forward. If it's going to roll forward, it has just enough to go back.
The Tesla
Which is different.
blend in brakes. It'll blend the brakes and it'll put the brakes on when you're
It will.
stop.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the Leaf does that.
Yeah, you do hear a tiny click. I don't know the difference between the tiny click you hear when it comes to a stop and the click you hear when you press that park button and hold it, because that's actually engaging, I think it's engaging the electronic emergency brake or whatever that equivalent is.
So when you put it in hold, your brake lights go on. So so you're at a stop sign, or maybe you're on a hill, the brake light's on. The brake lights stay on until you touch the accelerator. So it means it's engaging the braking system as I perceive it.
Oh, okay. Well,
Not all
because
EVs though.
yeah, because there is a standard, Lowell, that says that if you're have, I think it was a half a G worth of deceleration, the brake lights go on, whether you're touching a brake or not.
Yes, that's right. Since I have it in the high resistance mode, whenever I take my foot off the pedal and I'm coming to make a right turn or something like that, the brake lights go on. And then I can, I make, as soon as I touch the accelerator, they go off.
By the way, you go ahead. Good.
I was saying my i3 when I use, because I can basically one pedal drive. If I don't use the brakes at a stop, my taillights will go off. And I can sit there without moving, and you can tell that it's using it is using the motor to keep the car still, and it will do that indefinitely. And I would have to apply the brakes to get the brake lights back on. If I were pointing downhill, it would roll a little bit, but if I'm pointing uphill, it doesn't roll back, it stops. But you can feel it compensating. So it's pretty interesting.
I'd like to make a comment about a little bit, maybe in defense of Volkswagen. I think all of us that are in this meeting are early adopter type people, and we all like to kind of look out and do something that's efficient and is good for the environment too. But I think maybe Volkswagen is looking for somebody like my wife.
Yep.
One of the reasons I haven't bought only one of the reasons I haven't bought a newer EV than the one I have, which we really like, it is, I don't know how my wife would deal with like a Tesla with one screen and all that stuff there. I mean, I think she would learn it. And that's what I've heard in defense of some of the things that Volkswagen has done.
Well, Mark, I went and read the articles after that. I thought it was just me, but I found multiple articles, and they were all EV drivers saying the same thing. Then there's articles by Volkswagen, and they're very explicit about this. The objective of releasing the ID4 was to capture SUV fossil fuel drivers but they left us behind. So it would be a simple piece of software to go into EV mode, and I would leave it in EV mode. And they can do both at the same time with what they have on the vehicle as far as control systems.
Question, does the Volkswagen have over-the-air updates, or do you have to go to the dealership to get the software changed?
I don't know, and I don't think the dealer knows yet either.
They claim they have over-the-air updates.
Yeah, as long as you have it in the dealership's air.
Over the air, yeah. And Cecilia, you missed the typo. So at the show also, Lion Bus brought a bus, and I was familiar with Lion because I had interviewed with them once for a job. Lion's interesting to me because the argument that Caleb and I and sales guys used when we worked for Motive was, hey, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're using a standard chassis. And Lion went ahead and designed a new chassis, which was more appropriate for electric vehicles. It's interesting because we had to fit so much into Ford and other chassis, whereas what Lion did was said, okay, where do we need these things? How do we hang the batteries? And then designed a chassis to do that.
I asked the question about the one pedal driving, and now that it's been discussed by everyone, I'm confused and not sorry, but I really appreciate the Kia Soul that I have had, driven for nearly 6 years now. It just uses a shift lever on your right side near your leg, like an old-fashioned car kind of thing, and you pull it into the brake mode or not, and you use it. You can use it to come to stops in level areas, or certainly use it downhill to regenerate the batteries. And I like the idea that I'm alert and not floating on some software cloud where I don't know exactly what's going on. So I kind of appreciate the thing of still using a brake pedal, the throttle, and the brake handle to shift to the regeneration mode. So I guess I'll be driving new cars to test them hopefully this year, and maybe I'll learn more about this.
Bill, you'll only see a subtle difference, and the difference
Okay.
is in the case of the Leaf, for instance, you shift and
Yeah.
into this mode, and basically it increases the regen a bit, and you
Okay.
find that you never need to use the brake pedal if you plan ahead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what I'm used to.
Yeah, I mean, it's not any different. And then when you take your foot off the accelerator, the car doesn't go anyplace. That's the one
That's
key difference with one.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember at one of the meetings at Thunderstruck, after I got the car, I asked some of you people who are probably there or were at the meeting, I said, I'm going to drive by now with in the brake mode. I'm going to shift it in and tell me whether the brake lights come on.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. And they did.
Yeah,
They did.
I'm just saying, early adapter.
Mhm, mhm.
Thanks. a-
By the
Thank
way,
you.
your car's been discontinued.
Oh yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So is mine.
Too bad. One of the big pluses is parking in San Francisco. It's a short car, like the Bolt, like the Chevy Bolt.
Well, let's go into the news. Sonia, you sent this. I also got it from a friend of mine. You want to talk to it?
Yeah, I don't really remember anymore, but I think when the Smart Train first came out and they had decided to go with diesel engines, I was like, oh, they're gonna regret that,
Yeah.
And it was exciting to see this very traditional looking train. I was like one of those weird girls who had a train set, and I kind of like this, red and gray engine that's all boxy, and the idea that they had just dropped a whole bunch of GM Ultium cells in there, or plan to, and run it and pull all this weight. I just thought, wow, does anyone have any opinions about whether this makes sense or might even work?
But you notice I've got 4 links down there. I think 3 of them you supplied, and I had a 4th one. I went digging some more into this, trying to figure exactly what the platform was. They've been testing this year on a run between Barstow and Stockton. And this is a hybrid. Now, it's an interesting hybrid for this reason. I think I have this right. The one engine is fully electric and it has regen. Okay. But then they have more engines on the train. And so when they're going downhill, certainly you get the regen. But other times they can repower the batteries as a result of the other engines pushing this one along.
It's elegant. I like it.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, because so many times large trains, and they were talking about the size of the trains that they were using this with. The one that you sent, one article you sent was about the Australian Iron Company that's getting the 2nd generation, which is a 7 megawatt hour battery capacity. They pull 35 tons of iron ore. And temperature turns out to be one of their issues too. Anyway, they built this on an existing platform. Having electric trains is not something new, because we've had electric trains forever, but they had wires that you connected to. Doing this with batteries now and finding ways. The major thing with this, the takeaway on this will make trains 10 to 15% more fuel efficient, because they'll recapture energy going downhill and stopping and those kinds of things. And just that part alone makes it a worthwhile proposition.
Yeah.
I also like 75 miles an hour,
Well, Also on that, Jerry, I think you've said this before, and I know it's true. The thing about the electrics is that the diesels have been electric for a long time. They just had a diesel generator that ran the thing, and then they had onboard
Yeah.
dissipating coils that just basically wasted all of this electricity they were using downhill or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just, it's kind of a similar platform. They're not having to do that much except add a battery, it seems to.
Right. So instead of having the coils on the top and generating heat, they're generating electricity and storing it, or a chemical reaction and storing it.
Right.
I guess they keep a couple of those brake resistors in there.
And just in case, yeah. And what if the batteries were full?
You know what I've been thinking about lately, I know this is another discussion topic, but the idea of the fluid battery or the flow battery. I'm curious if that would at all be useful for a freight train because of their huge capacity, of weight. Anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it is a different topic. It is a battery talk, but the big things about flow batteries is intuitively, we don't recognize something that most of the batteries that we use, the power and the energy are tied together, right? In the case of a flow battery, the power is determined by the interface. The amount of chemical you have determines the amount of energy.
Mhm.
And so it's extremely different. Here was a full charge in 15 minutes from ABB. Somebody send this one to me, or did I pick this one up?
I saw it.
You want to talk to it?
I saw it too. I don't know if I sent it to you though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so my understanding is that ABB is setting up these fast car charging networks for some of the more advanced, newer cars that have that capacity to pull it in. And so they're just kind of trying to hopscotch over the Tesla settings that are coming out right now. And what they've done is they've put it into a package that looks a little bit like a gas service station model, so that you can pull two cars to the left of it and two cars to the right of it, and maybe start a little bit of a car flow situation that people are comfortable or familiar with, which is really kind of funny. I know with backup cameras, Tesla chose the backup to the back end kind of thing. And that I found a little surprising because I had never backed into spots that often, as a person who would put my car in a parking space. And so I could see, isn't it funny that some, highly technical decisions could be made around just people are familiar with gas stations and want to pull up like this.
A corollary to that is on an energy group in the city of Sebastopol. And one of the ideas that came up recently, and when we get into the other discussion, I'll tell you my frustration with the trip to Tahoe, is to create a fueling station, a recharging station in Sebastopol, because we're the crossroads of two highways. People are coming through all the time. And finding where you charge. If you have a plug share and your phone is working, that's fine. But if you're using your Nissan Leaf and having it tell you where to find the station, good luck, because it sent me to several places where the stations weren't. And then it skipped multiple stations that were very handy and I couldn't find because my phone wasn't working. But this whole concept of building fueling facilities for EVs with signs that say here is less for EV drivers and more for those who will become EV drivers, because it is exactly what you said, Sonia, the familiar pattern. Here's the pattern. I know I need to go refuel because I've been doing that my entire life. Now, 80% of the fueling that we do is at our homes. But for a person who drives a gasoline powered vehicle, they assume they're not going to get an EV until they see the fueling stations start to show up. And that's why I thought this was interesting, this pattern. And Tesla's talking about the same kind of thing. The one thing here was that their bragging rights here was they get an additional 110 miles worth of range with a 15-minute charge over a Tesla supercharger.
Yeah, but as Sonia said, you have to have a car that
Yeah,
can
no, I
accept
know.
that charge.
I
But I want to make another point here is that when you talk to people about cars, when people are researching cars or looking into what car they want to buy, one of the facts they don't ask and is not obvious is what is the capacity of this car to receive a charge?
Yeah.
My current 2014 Tesla, I believe it's 15 kilowatts. It's gone up there. I mean, most of the charging stations, in fact, all the charging stations I go to are either 150 or 250 kilowatts, the fast charging stations. I can't take advantage of that. My car is not capable of using, charging at that.
It's a Tesla,
Yeah,
it takes 15 kilowatt, you say 1.5?
50
50,
kilowatts.
okay,
50,
thank you.
50. I don't know if that was 2014. What is it today? I don't know. What is it? What is your Sonia? Your Model 3? Do you know what it's capable of doing?
Cecilia, help me. I think it's 150. I've done 150 at superchargers. But my question is how high up do you want to go near the max that your car will allow when that may not be the most healthy thing to do for the battery. So,
That's
you
all a
gonna-
thermal management issue, though.
Yeah,
Oh, so that would be just kind of the arc of like how, through the middle of the
Yeah.
battery, you're going to go at the highest speed, but you're going to
Right.
taper it back.
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah, most of the
110-mile
studies-
range,
Right.
like adding this amount is only going to happen if you're between, like 20%, and it's like that 20 to 80% of your battery capacity. And then once you're above that 80%, it's going to start to taper.
Right.
When you hit 90%, it's really going to taper off, and you might as well just move on.
And
Yeah.
That
this-
makes sense.
this-
Just,
this is
yeah,
where the-
Cecilia's saying 170, but most of the Tesla superchargers that are more recently upgraded, so not all, and not the ones that were built like 3 years ago and not upgraded. The very fastest ones are going to like 150, right, Cecilia?
They've,
Maybe
250.
Actually, there are
No.
there are 250 kilowatt charging stations. The charging station, one of the charging stations I visited on the way to Long Beach had both. It had a set of 150s and a set of 250s. So
and
they've got, they're
it's a
creating
350
250s.
right
There
in
must be,
Santa Rosa. I don't know if it's Tesla.
yeah.
But there's a 350 in Santa
Wow.
Rosa at the
Wow.
Whole Foods.
I think there's a solution to this problem you're all discussing. And I can't remember the name of the company, but there is a company in Europe now or Britain that has devised a system that they stack the charging units separate from the post you're plugging into. And if you drive in with a low need, it takes that on. If you're 360, it does that. So not each post is the same thing. What it does is it varies it depending on the car you have. So it can do a really old Leaf, or it could do, a new Jaguar or whatever, and it charges them differently, but has a central system with stacked devices. I wish I could, I've heard about it, and apparently it addresses the problems that everybody's discussing here.
And
That
it's not so much a problem, it's a little bit of a confusion and change in how things are done. Going through the Storage X series with at Stanford, I learned a lot. And also you look at the studies now, fast charges, as long as you're not pushing things, don't seem to decrease the life on the batteries. And everybody thought they would. It has to do with basically the ions getting jammed into the anode side, and they get stacked up. And if you go too fast, it creates a plate where it gets harder and harder, and that leaves the ions stuck there. That's what their research is starting to show. And that's the reason it also slows down at the 80% level. It's not a chemistry thing, it's a physical thing that the ions that got into the lattice have to find a way further into the lattice, and it gets more and more difficult. It's like piling more stuff in, and that's why it all slows down towards the end.
Yeah.
There are some of the applications you can get, the apps you get that help you plan trips. One of them, they're called ABRP. You say, I want to go from A to B, and they basically say, well, what are you starting with? What do you want to end up with? And then they'll send you to charging stations, not to get 100% fill, to go to 60 or 80.
80.
And then, you know, and
That's
then
the
so
reason
stop
why.
more often and stay there a shorter time, and
And
you'll
then-
actually get there sooner.
Yeah, then the Nissan a program that comes on your iPad that says plan the trip only plans on you charging at 80% because you'll get there faster. That's exactly right. Otherwise, you're going to sit there in the last 20% loading up. And when we get to our talking later, I'll tell you about my experience going into Tahoe and with the charge stations. Oops, sorry about that. So Ford is building 4 new factories. 3 of them are battery factories. 2 in Kentucky, 1 in Tennessee. And the one in Tennessee is going to be for their new electric pickup truck assembly plant. They're spending $11.4 billion creating 11,000 jobs in the electric field. And they actually are modeling it over what Henry Ford did in Detroit and building essentially a new complex larger than the one that he built at the turn of the last century called Blue Oval City. And it will also house the component suppliers. This is something that China's been doing. They're making sure that component suppliers are next to where the vehicles are being assembled. And just like Volkswagen, part of their plan is they're building a battery recycling plant. And everybody thinks that's really nice stuff and good stuff and great that they do this. But all of the manufacturers working in EVs have now found out that they want the batteries back because the recycling material is about 99% recyclable materials. And the quality of the lithium, the quality of the elements they get back is higher quality than they can get when they go to ore. And it costs a lot less for them to retrieve that. And that's why all of them are planning on being in business for 20 years.
Great.
The Kentucky battery is going to be used in the Lincolns and in the new Ford EVs. They have 150,000 back orders for the F-150. So I guess people are buying it sight unseen.
It is the #1 selling vehicle in the US.
That's right. It's the #1 selling vehicle in the US. And so in the same article I was reading, it was talking about transportation being the largest part of GHGs, and 30% of that is these vehicles. Anyway, the other thing I always find this interesting, Ford has a market cap of $56 billion. And Tesla has a market cap of $800 billion. So we have the little company with 4 models, 5 models, whatever, has a valuation more than 10 times an established company.
It's
But
insane.
when GM went big on electrics, their market cap went way up, right?
Yeah,
So I'm sure Ford is like,
Sure.
we are undervalued. Yeah.
No,
I dropped this down at the bottom here. It's from the same article. GM also is planning on 4 new EV factory plants being built here in the US. Toyota has flipped and they said, okay, I guess we need to build battery EVs and not hybrids. And Volkswagen, Mercedes, they're all building battery plants. So all of the manufacturers are building battery plants. Now that's kind of funny because none of them built oil plants.
So there was an article I read but did not send in about how Stellantis is also building plants in the United States. And they own all of Chrysler and Fiat and Renault and Citroën and a whole bunch of different car companies. They're a real I guess they're a big holding company, but they're planning to have a consistent architecture across all of their products.
Yeah, I wrote it down as Fiat Chrysler because I can never remember the new name. Last month, I pointed out that Volkswagen also has a standard platform, and they've been trying to talk everybody else into using their standard platform.
Hey,
John,
Jerry, could I mention something?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, it's interesting at Thunderstruck, we've had our shipping costs go up like exponentially, particularly for the idea of shipping batteries overseas. And it may be that that's partly why it's really a benefit to companies to make their own batteries locally, because it just is, and it's great because we can do it here and save money and get more accessible. We're more responsible for what we're making and stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to say is that I'm just so happy to see this happening in Kentucky, because I have this little idea that how to change the politics in the United States is to put plants that have something having to do with kind of liberal attitudes in all of the conservative states. And so, hey,
I didn't think about that one. We don't want EVs. We just want fossil fuel. And there's Kentucky going, oh, wait a second. Okay.
I have, this might be a little far afield, but I know we have a couple extra minutes today. Blue Oval City just kind of stood out to me because clearly, Ford has an ad agency that is working for them and came up with the city name. And I know that most ad agency people take all of their vacations at Black Rock City. And so I'm sure that while they were in Black Rock City, they were like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's call that Kentucky plant Blue Oval City. Yeah.
This one I didn't get a lot on, but came in, was there's a $15 billion climate bill in California, 3.9 billion. And DJ and I were talking about what billions, millions, and trillions mean. I have another talk that I gave to a different group on Bill Gates' book, and I was talking about the difference in the thousands. And I looked at, just $3.9 billion. That's all we're going to get for these vehicles. But I guess that's a good amount of money. E-bike buyers are going to get a new tax credit. Did I find this one? Somebody else sent this to me. I can't remember.
I sent it to you.
Okay,
David Hare.
you want to talk about it? Did you read
Well,
up?
no, my wife sent it to me. She
I see. Well, why isn't she on the call?
She calls me her research associate.
Anyway, so out of that $3 trillion tax bill, there's 7.4 billion for vehicles under 15 miles an hour. And e-bikes can fit in that category. 2020 was a big year. 274,000 e-bikes were sold. I see them a lot here in Sebastopol now, almost as many as regular bikes or unpowered bikes. And the tax credits would be something like $750 per person, phasing out if you're making over $150,000 a year. And it includes community costs. So you can file, I guess it's a tax benefit. It includes something else, which I just saw an article in New York City. New York City put in something like 30 miles of protected bike lanes this year and 28 miles last year. And this year they actually put a bike lane across the Brooklyn Bridge, which is separate from the walking lanes. So it is a transportation lane. We don't have that over the Golden Gate Bridge. I do see it on the Richmond Bridge, though. There is a bike lane on the Richmond Bridge.
Maybe
A lot of e-bikes go faster than 15 miles an hour.
Yes, I know they do. I know they do. Yeah. In fact, the brake over is 25 miles an hour. Above that, if you can go over that, I get them backwards. It's class 3, I think, at that point. The New York plant is going to do the same thing as California now. And in fact, they use some of the California framework to ban the sale of gasoline-powered vehicles after 2035. They've told the New York Energy, I forgot what it is, whatever agency, to figure out how to do all this in the same way we do with CARB. And they have the similar goals that they're adopting for medium and heavy vehicles as well. Although EV sales in New York were under 2% last year. This This one's an interesting one because I've now seen more articles for next month on this. Both Wright and another company are building more and more motors for aircraft. And these motors with Wright are built for larger aircraft with plans for Boeing and Airbus for 150 passenger aircraft that are electric. You know, one of the things that's possible also is we may see hybrid aircraft when we have already seen that, because the efficiency gets better. One of the problems with flying is you get higher and higher and the air gets thinner and thinner, and you have to figure out what to do with the fuel mixtures. And that's why turbocharged, whatever. Well, an electric motor works just as well on the ground as it does at 20,000 feet, except for the fact that it needs to be warmed. Their design goal is a 2-motor design for an A320. That's pretty amazing. And again, one of the reasons that they end up with this kind of motor design is they're trying to reduce the weight. And for our cars, the weight's not as important as it is. It's important, but not as important for an aircraft. Anyway, there's a design now out there for a 10-motor, 150 passenger aircraft. And again, that's one of the things that you couldn't do with internal combustion engines or jet engines. And you can just put a shitload of these things on there because they're so small. And the other thing I got out of the AOPA was just the list of companies that are introducing electric aircraft of one form or another in the next 3 years for commercial operation. Uber gave up on their own effort and instead gave $75 million to Joby for their S4. That's 170 knots. And that surprised me how fast it was. So 150 nautical mile, 170 knots is about 190 miles an hour, 195 miles an hour. Just a 5-seat electric vertical takeoff. The amount of money being put in is amazing, because some of the numbers I found were in the hundreds of millions and some in the billions of dollars invested in individual companies to develop electric aircraft of one form or another. Okay. I'm going to throw in a peanut gallery thing on my trip to Tahoe. The Nissan Leaf, this is the longest road trip I've done in the Leaf. So it's only 200 miles. I had to stop. This is a 160-mile range battery pack. So I had to stop, according to Nissan. I could have gone further. And I charged up and I went to the first station to charge, and that was El Dorado Hills. And on PlugShare, it says it's 50 kilowatt. When I got there, it was 30 kilowatt. It was hard to find. I get into the parking lot. It says it's going to be in that parking lot, and I'm looking around. And at that point, my phone was working. My phone stopped working because AT&T decided my technology wasn't good enough, so they turned off my phone while I'm on a trip, relying on PlugShare instead of my Leaf. Anyway, so I waited for that charge. That wasn't too bad. Then it said, okay, go 20 miles because you're going to climb 7,000 feet. Now, I benchmarked it. I discovered that a Nissan Leaf uses 4 kilowatt hours for every 1,000 feet, or 0.4 for every 100 feet. So it had me stop just 15 miles down the road, get charged again at another 50 kilowatt charger. Well, when I plugged in, it was charging at 16. But then there was another one just a half a mile away at the Shell station. So I plugged into that one, which was 50 kilowatts. That charged at 18. Okay, so the definition as to this is a 50 kilowatt versus whatever else, and I'm Chathamo. My car will take 50. I've seen it take 50. So I was kind of disappointed. Climbed up the hill, got to the pass. I think I had 30% capacity left, and then came down the hill for the 1,000 feet or so, and had about 50% capacity left. Then on the way back, that was the most disturbing part, because now at this point, my phone's not working and I'm relying on the car. When I left Tahoe, because of the driving I had been doing, it said I had a 140-mile range. When I got to the top of the pass, it said something like 120-mile range. When I got to Placerville, it said 170-mile range. And in fact, I had 92% a charge. I started with 100% charge. I had a 92% charge by the time I got to Placerville, 50 miles away. So it looks like I can make it all the way, and it's calculating things. Then I started on the flat, and very quickly it's recalculating, saying you need to stop in Vacaville. So I stopped in Vacaville to go to the station there. I couldn't find it. I drove around for about 5 miles. I didn't find it the last time I was there. So the next station en route is in Fairfield. So I stopped there, and I'm driving around and I can't find that one. Now I'm getting nervous. And now I tell it, give me a station off route. And it's now 9:30 at night. I was going to be home by 7:30, but I've been looking for stations. It takes me about 5 miles off into a shopping center. And I stop and I ask people, are there stations, charge stations, any place here? And finally, one guy goes, I think I saw something down that way. And I drive all the way down, finding the station, then plugging in, and that one charged well, I plugged in the first one, it's EV Go. And it didn't work. And it says, if the station doesn't work, call this number. My phone wasn't working.
No.
So I go, oh shit, I'm screwed. And I just tried another station there. It started to work and started charging the car up. And I got more than enough charge to get home from there. And that one actually did about 30 kilowatts. That got me to feel even stronger that the concept of a fueling station, like we have gas stations, it has to be obvious. It has to be on routes. It has to work. And you don't want to rely on the advertisement of the car or the advertisement of plug share. You want to be able to drive like the gasoline powered drivers do. It doesn't tell them which station to go to. They're driving along the highway and they see a station. How many times have you seen a sign on the highway that said, get off here to charge up your car? Anyway, that's my peanut gallery ad.
I agree completely that it has to, and that's one of the things that will make it seem commonplace to people that electric cars are just like gasoline cars, because you'll come to a freeway exit and it'll say gas, lodging, and electric charge, little icons saying you can get all these things at this exit. And people will be seeing this all the time because they need to feel comfortable that they can find a charger. But on another point, I mean, what surprises me is that what you're describing would never happen in a Tesla, because the Tesla knows where all its charging stations are, and it can walk you through each turn it takes to get to them, and show you right to the exact spot where they are, and talk you right through it. And
so this is the Leaf, by the way, but when you follow all those turns and you get there, there's nothing there.
Okay. So and there were several times when I went to Long Beach where a couple of the stations that were really in some little parking lot, obscure parking lot that was like I mean kind of hard to find, but there was one of them and I can't remember the location, but it was pretty central, and it was really large. It had like 30 or 40 charging stations, and it had a little a building, a Tesla building there that had refreshments in it, and places to sit down, and a really nice bathroom and all that stuff. And I thought, this has got to be the future of charging stations. It should be not just a place that you charge, but you can go in there, you can sit in a comfortable chair and read a book while you're waiting, and get a cup of coffee and whatever.
You should look up the stations in Norway. There's a huge Circle K that was installed, I don't know, a year or so ago, that is exactly that. It looks like a gas station. It's right on the highway. You pull in, there's like 6 300 kilowatt chargers, a handful of 200s, and it's like there's stalls, like you drive through like you would at a gas station, and then in the middle there's this like 2-level lounge space where you can buy refreshments. You can go upstairs and have a view of the charging lot. It's all solar powered, and it's exactly that. But the saturation of EVs there is so high that they don't need gas stations anymore. They need more things like that, and so they're but Circle K is driving that, and it's really interesting to see what's possible when EV adoption is at a high enough rate.
David, you have your hand up? Or you're on mute though.
Yeah, I got it off again. This is a Nissan specific question. There are two subscription services. There's Nissan Connect, and then there's Sirius XM. And kind of to my surprise, Sirius XM is all you need for the map and that stuff to work in a Nissan Leaf. Are you subscribed to both the Sirius XM?
No,
you're not subscribed to
just the Connect.
Nissan Connect either.
Yeah, just to Connect.
And I subscribe to Sirius XM, and that gives me the map as well as all the radio stuff. But then Nissan keeps sending me reminders to renew my subscription to Nissan Connect, and that doesn't add very much. And I forget what the feature is, but
it surprised me that they haven't updated the stations, because there are other stations that, if I look at PlugShare, there's a ton of stations along the way between here and Tahoe. And in fact, there was one within 150 feet of where I was driving that probably worked just fine, but the Nissan didn't know about it. So on the Nissan, by the way, you guys know I've been wrestling with what car to get next. And I'm hoping to see the EV6 from Kia. And that's one I'd really like to try test driving. It won't show up for a while. And I didn't know what to do with my car. So I'm going to mention this one for everybody to think about it for a second, because it surprised me. When I turned in my 2011 Leaf, I got $3,500 from the dealer for it. My 2018 Leaf has a residual value right now of $12,130. So I went on the web to find out how much were 2018 Leafs of my type for sale. And very few had as little mileage as I have, and not a single one was selling for less than $22,000. So here I am about to turn in my lease instead of buying the car. And even if I had a plan for another car, it didn't make any sense. I should buy the car and sell it as an individual, because the value of the car is much higher than the residual lease.
Absolutely. I mean, during these times, used cars are selling at a premium.
Yeah.
I mean, new cars are really hard to come by. So people who want electric cars are having a hard time buying them, finding them for sale. So they're turning to the used car market and driving the prices way up.
Oh, wow. Well, anyway, I'm going to the dealer to go buy it. So
there you go. So I had a unique experience because of the vehicle shortage wasn't nearly at its peak when I relocated to Southern California. And so we looked at the possibility of unloading a car so we didn't have to move it down here. And so when I priced out with like Vroom and Carvana to have my i3 just purchased by them. And at the time, the value was, I don't know, around $10,000 or $11,000. Since moving to Southern California, the value of my car today, even with more miles, is in excess of almost $15,000. Selling it to a middle person, which is very, very interesting. So those values, like those used car prices, like you said, are really skyrocketing because there's no sign of supply chain, release in the next, 6 months or so.
Well, yeah, no kidding on that, because I heard from two dealers, Kia, we got a car. And then when I stopped and I contacted Nissan, said, I think I'm going to buy the car. And Brent goes, hey, they told me I'm getting 15 cars last month. I got 2. He says, I'm supposed to get 20 this month. I think I'm going to get 4. He said, I could reserve one for you. I said, no, I'm going to keep looking around and see what else. I want to try something different this time around. And since it's owned by the same guy, I don't think he has a problem with buying a Kia. But we'll keep looking at other cars, and that was kind of an interesting one.
I know that my sister just has a Mazda CX-5, so it's a fossil fuel car, and,
Yeah.
she was on the right side of that lease buyout as well. So I guess you could say the dealers are all upside down on there.
Yeah, yeah. When the dealers, I found out something else which surprised me. The dealers don't, for the EVs, don't hold the used cars. They actually go, if you want a used car, you go in and say, I'm looking for one. They go out and search the web, basically, find one, buy it with you in mind, and then provide it to you. Okay.
Very,
Yeah.
a couple comments. One about the Circle K. I think you were talking about, Lowell, right? That kind of a service station to me is the ultimate, and has so much potential, not only for just doing that, but even more. And I'm just trying to think, how do we participate in encouraging that kind of a station to get here? I mean, would it take a bunch of letters to Circle K and say, hey, I noticed a gas station on in the Sacramento that would really be a perfect spot? I mean, because if some gas stations were converted over to that, it would be perfect, because all of the location and the signage is kind of figured out. Gas stations are going to be phasing out. I don't know, just where do we go from here? Because getting even one of those in a place like Sacramento would be so cool, because it would just expose everyone to that possibility.
If you figure it out, John, let me know. Like I said, we've been talking about that here for Sebastopol. We actually have a location that we were thinking of. And I wrote down 5 things that I thought need to be investigated, location, whether the power is available to do that. And the one location that we were looking at would be right next to all the stores and restaurants and whatever else. And so for business, it would be a boost for business as well. So and I wrote to Shell to see if I can find a contact at Shell, since they actually do have an EV charging business. And I was trying to find out how gas stations are done. I think they're done as, I just went blank.
Like franchises.
Franchise, thank you. Yeah, as you said yesterday, I'm getting older.
I would, I have concerns about if we just have like a lot of DC fast charging stations around. I think that for the grid, it's best if we could have more level 2 charging stations at places where people leave their cars. But for travel, like definitely along major routes, that gas station model seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, Cecilia, I agree with you. I've been arguing with people about this because a lot of the grants that are coming out, they're putting in level 2 chargers along the roadway, and they're going, don't waste your time. Put in fast chargers along the roadway. But on the other hand, for high density housing, for renters or whatever else, you need to have the level 2, even level 1, where people can park their car overnight. It's close to where they live or close to where they work, and differentiate the two. The other thing that I was pointing out was that the number of gas stations that we have, we will never need the number of fast charge facilities that we have in gas stations, because 80% of the time we charge at home. And it's only when you're on the road and on a trip that you want to do a fast charge. And the rest would be the 220 and 110.
Right. Now another thing that I would like to see happen is that these charging stations we're imagining are for all cars, Teslas, CHAdeMO, CCS, everybody can go there and find a charger that works for them and is a fast charger. And so there needs to be some type of an agreement between all of these different different charging systems and the plugs that they use and all that to allow this kind of thing to happen.
I don't think we have to worry, Lowell. I don't think we have to worry about it for this reason. Tesla already said they're supporting CCS. Nissan will discontinue CHAdeMO in future vehicles. So we're talking about vehicles which are fielded today, legacy vehicles like mine, and like the Teslas, but I actually believe that CCS is going to become the standard in North America. And CCS will be the standard in Europe as well, but it'll be a different CCS.
Yeah, it's slightly different, but it follows the same protocols.
Yeah, same protocol.
Yeah. The other thing to Cecilia's point about, the stress on the grid. So that Circle K has supplemented their, dependence on the grid with they have a 50 kilowatt solar array, just over, and 200 kilowatt hours of on-site storage, so that they're not fully dependent on, grid stability. They're actually providing more stability as as they contribute their solar power when their systems aren't being fully utilized. And so I think if they're designed properly, like this one, they obviously put a lot of thought into it. It's like gas stations all have nice big covers over them, of course, therefore fire suppression, but perfect place to put solar panels. So it's like, the design considerations for spaces like that are really critical to making sure that they are a benefit to the grid rather than a liability.
That whole discussion is an interesting one, because you start to think about a guy I used to work for called thinking orthogonally. We have stations today and you have to deliver the fuel to the station. So we keep thinking we're going to run the wires to the station to deliver the fuel to the station. What if the station is generating most of its own fuel?
Right. I mean, you imagine in places like Nebraska, where there's vast stretches of farmland, and you set up a station and just put a whole bunch of solar panels out on this open land that gets a tremendous amount of sun, and you can probably do 90% of your collect 90% of the energy you need that way.
Yeah, one of my friends drove down to Santa Barbara and stopped. It's been a problem stopping midway between Salinas and even San Luis Obispo. And Electrify America has put a station there, but I think the station is entirely powered by solar panels and batteries.
Wow.
So
Perfect.
it's a standalone station.
I wonder, since the county kind of makes some decisions about where they might place, the next station or something, like there are different entities that have different, little pools of funds to place stations. I wonder if there's a way to kind of model where all the EVs need stations based on where the Tesla EVs need stations. Like you can see the activity at the current Tesla stations and kind of model that out a little bit. You could even scrape their site to some extent to just kind of get a sense of where good places might be. Because I am curious, someone said earlier, like, is Sebastopol a good spot for a pull through fast charging station? I don't know if that's true or not yet, but certainly people charge a lot along the 101 in Petaluma and Rohnert Park and Santa Rosa.
Well, that's because you live way there out in the outskirts. You live in town and you walk around and you see the traffic going down 116 and 12. You go, yeah, absolutely new fueling station here.
Well, yeah, but how much, or how quickly compared to others, like, when you kind of compare it to, where else you need it, right?
David, you still have your hand up, and is that leftover?
Either David.
David Harris, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna push my button here. Oops, maybe I'm gonna push my button here. There we go. Presentations. We don't have a presentation, but open discussion on how do we pitch EVs. And Cecilia, you just give me blank slides, right?
That's correct.
Okay, fine. I was worried that I missed something. Am I supposed to be writing in these as we go?
Oh yeah, that would be optimal if you can.
Okay, let me escape out of here.
I like that idea. I was wondering if people wanted to do some storytelling about how a couple conversations went, and then we'd come up with them, or maybe we just come up with the tactics.
Well, I don't know about other people, but I'm excited about this idea, Cecilia, because My daughter Ellen and I, who converted this pickup in 2011, have been into EVs and how to promote it and stuff, and are also thinking about what other alternatives there are for work as a way of making sort of side income. And we both are interested in talking to people about EVs. And so we've done a lot of, going to the shows that we used to do and going around the neighborhood and telling people about rebates and stuff. But just recently, there was a woman that we know really well who wanted to go to an EV partly because of us talking about it. So I've had conversations with a few people lately on the phone that are interested in going into EVs from, ICE cars and very, very new at it. So anyway, I can say some things about that too. I don't know if this is a good time to go into
But
those.
we're into it. Tactics that work. What worked?
Well, I mean, what I find myself doing is confronting somebody who really doesn't know the terminology. So, for instance, regenerative braking is an unknown. It's too complicated. And so having, talking about that is an important aspect, and coming to a very simple way of saying it. For instance, when you put on the brakes, you waste energy as opposed to an electric, motor, returning it back to the pack. It's kind of it's like a miracle. I mean, it's as though this is something that is a new concept for people, that you can actually do that. So regenerative, the overall picture, I think the process I find that works for people is to give them the alternative of using a hybrid that has a plug-in capability. For instance, a Volt, I think, is probably the best I know of out there, because it gets close to 50-mile range. And to if they're hesitant, if there's hesitancy, use a plug-in hybrid for a while and even lease it until they're on board. So, and it's safe because they get long range, and you get all the benefits of the possibility of being electric only for local travel. And you also get all the regenerative braking and other benefits, making it more efficient. So, those are kind of some of the primary things. And then, having a list of available cars that are kind of recommended by some of the consumer reports or automotive reviews is really handy, because then people can do their own research, and encouraging people, not coming on like righteous, like, I know what kind of car you want, but
yeah,
you go find, determine your range, your daily range, determine what you like in a car, and go look it up on the internet and see if any of those match, and then go drive it. I mean, those are kind of the basics I run into.
Right. Okay. I mean, I have, an instance where, I mean, this was several years ago, shortly after you did your presentation on your research into buying a car, I made a copy of that set of slides, and a couple of friends of mine asked me, what I'm really interested in buying an electric car. What do you think I should buy? And I said, well, I can't tell you exactly, but I can, but here's a fairly current story of what's available, and a person who went into a lot of trouble to research all the ins and outs of it, and look it over and see what you decide. And they did. In both cases, the person wound up buying an electric car. Now, I don't have anything that is up to date. There's an entirely new world out there now.
Yeah.
But it would be really nice to be able to do that.
Yeah. Mike, you have your hand up.
Sure. I wanted to kind of say the tactics I use is kind of what Cecilia said earlier. She said she spent $50 on car maintenance in however many years she's owned the car. I tell people that I haven't been to a gas station in 10 years. And in my car, I've just done tires and wiper blades, and that's it. I spent zero money on in-service maintenance. And I find the financial side is a big one for persuading people to go electric rather than the technology side. I mean, there's some people who like the technology, but the more you tell them that you leave your house full every day, and you don't have to spend money or time at a gas station, has worked, or at least I think has helped persuade some people.
I like that. I like saying that charging at home is convenient and safe. I think that sometimes people feel like charging at home every day sounds like a nuisance. But when you talk about how inconvenient it is to find a gas station in the moment that you need one, how you might feel unsafe, and that like really just plugging in each, every few nights. And really, I've started to mention how infrequently I actually charge, a couple times a week or whatever.
Yeah, and that's all good stuff. There are some standard objections, and they're the old ones we know about. Is the range issue is a big one. Yeah, I'm not going to buy an electric car until that I can find one that's affordable and goes more than 300 miles. And so, okay, that's a limited set. Or the ability of one of the things is I don't know, I it needs to haul a trailer. I don't think I can electric cars pull trailers. I have this trailer that I need to I go on vacations with. And yes, they can, but this is what I don't know is, how does that affect the range?
Significantly.
So yeah, significantly, I know. And as significantly as it does an ICE car.
Yeah,
ICE
but
cars also-
nobody ever
Exactly.
notices it in the ICE car. I mean, one of the things
They
that I was
stop
thinking
every
about as I was
150
driving up
miles.
the mountain was, hey, I'm using up all kinds of range going up the mountain. Well, I did that all the time in an ICE car, and I never noticed it. I never thought about it.
Right.
It's the case.
Anyway, yeah. There are a lot of standard objections, and certainly the perceptive that they're more expensive because all they look at is the sticker price, and they don't consider the incentives that are available. That are hopefully will continue to be available in the future too.
So I'd like to have somebody talk to that one, because total cost of ownership is something that in vehicles
Tesla.
you didn't think about before, right? I mean, did anybody here buy a vehicle because it had better gas mileage?
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
back.
A
Oh
Prius.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay,
I bought it because it was orange.
you bought it because it was orange.
And nobody bought a car before electrics because it didn't ever have a brake job or because you didn't have to change the oil. I mean, that was just given, right?
Yeah.
So people need to know that. They need to know you won't change oil or have a brake job probably with this car.
Right. Yeah.
You won't have a transmission problem.
Right. Or a fan belt go out and your car overheat.
Or have to do a California smog test every other year.
Yes.
Important. No smog tests. I think that's something to put down.
I've had people ask, like, how much does your electric bill go up? And I said, oh, it's like a hot tub or something. It depends on how much you drive, so it's hard to say. But maybe just saying, like, you're going to at least spend half as much, than the price of gas. I mean, it depends on, right now, gas is high. So I don't, do other people have quick and easy ways of saying how?
Well, when
Much
I've looked at it, you're using a fifth of the energy in an electric, and because there's 4/5 that get wasted, and at least at some point, look at the cost of kilowatt hours. It's kind of like energy cost. You are actually wasting that energy cost, and when you save it at home, you're saving that energy cost, unless you have other circumstances that make your bill high.
Since I have a solar panel, but if I didn't have the solar panels, or at least the rate I'm on now to charge a car at night is basically 15 or 16 cents a kilowatt hour. I get 3 miles per kilowatt hour. It's 5 cents a mile for energy to drive that car. And even a friend who has a Prius right now, not a plug-in Prius, but just a regular Prius, their cost is 10 cents a mile for gas, right? So I think that, and if you have a car that is only getting 25 miles a gallon, then you're paying almost 20 cents or 18 cents a mile just for the energy. So it's 3 times. So I think that's
before the electric schedules had changed, when I got my first EV back in '98, production EV, my number was that it was 1/5 as expensive to drive the EV than it was to drive the gas car. And the gas car was at 34 miles per gallon.
So could you say something like, this is the marketing part that I love. Like you could say, hey, do you remember $1 a gallon gas? Like, get ready to feel that way again. You
Yeah.
didn't say it's the equivalent, but you know, like, cause it's $1 to a gallon equivalent or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's gonna feel good. You know, and I love the word waste, John. I think, you know, saying that brakes just kind of waste all that energy like that's actually very emotional too. What
Yeah.
I noticed when I was talking to a couple of people recently is how emotional the conversation was,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
how it was really related to how they felt about car purchases in the past. And what I learned was that they would never buy a VW again because of Dieselgate, and that they would never buy one other brand. And I can't remember if it was Honda or Toyota actually, but it was because of an experience where they got screwed over by a dealer. And I thought, you know, I guess we could have had there was so much to cover and so much to talk about that I could have had a shorter conversation with them if I said, are there any brands that you just wouldn't buy? And then we would have been like, you know, a little closer.
I had a discussion with somebody recently and I didn't know what to do with it. And just a little bit in this category. She knew she wanted an EV. And she was a friend of a friend. And they said, can she give you a call so you can recommend which EV? And I said, sure. And I got on the phone with her and I said, I can't recommend an EV. There's over 50 models. She only knew of, you know, my friends have a Kona. And I was looking at you know, I have a Nissan and I was thinking of a Kia and Volkswagen, and she has a small garage and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, wait a second, selecting which car is exactly the same today with EVs as it was when you bought your last car that was gasoline powered. Do you like that it's orange? Or is it the right size? Does it have the right number of seats? Do you like the inside? The vehicles themselves are getting closer and closer to comparable. Do you care about the range? Most people, when you really have the range discussion with them, if you think about it, they shouldn't care about the range. It doesn't make any difference. Nobody goes 300 miles. I mean, there are some of us who do road trips and do quite a few. But for most of us, you know, maybe it's 1 or 2 road trips a year. Why would you buy something you kept in your garage all year long that you only use twice a year? Unless it was an airplane.
Yeah. On that note, Jerry, let's add to the list the idea that if you have an EV, regardless of the range, and you want to go on a long road trip, you can still frickin' rent one or lease one from the dealer or do whatever, lease an ICE if you want. You know, I mean,
yeah.
if you go once a year to Tahoe or to Nevada or whatever, lease or rent it. So what?
You know what I really like about what you said, Jerry, is you could say, go ahead and pick your favorite color and your favorite seat configuration and, you know, body style and how it feels when you sit in it. And I'll help you learn how to use it. You know, like, because they're a little like concerned about, do I drive it home and plug it in and will it all work? And I'm also noticing, you know, people like, even if it were a gas car, they're like, oh my God, there's so many new things. Like all of us, you know, if you waited 7 years and you got another car, it's like, there's a little overwhelm on the technology side.
Yeah.
So, you know, classic tech support is kind of the thing.
I agree. Yeah, we're all in a much better place to help people like that. I mean, we may not think of ourselves as techs, but much better than the new EV owner. And so, yeah, suggesting you'll help them, even figuring out how to plug it in or whatever. You know, at home.
Yes, I have a friend who bought a Bolt, and they had the hardest time figuring out how to use, you know, a charge point charger, and you know, signing up for it, and they were really worried. They had to go and test to make sure that they could actually make it work and all that. And so there was a lot of anxiety around that, and they asked me for help and advice and about how to do that, and you know, we got them through it. And once they did it a few times, they were okay. But they don't, you know, that's all they do is charge by. They didn't even realize there's other places they could go with this vehicle.
Yeah,
that's
although
just-
you brought something up and go back to the previous conversation as to why we need depot stations as opposed to, if the pump isn't working at the gas station, I go knock on the door and there's a person there and I said, that pump's not working. You go to a charge location today, there's never anybody there.
No one there.
Right. And so you have no support. That's an interesting aspect that hadn't occurred to me before. And it should have occurred to me when I went up to that EVgo one and it didn't work. And it said, use your telephone to get us to fix it.
Just a little note that we do have a couple more duplicate slides if you want to switch to
Yeah.
others. Okay.
I know.
Okay. But the thing that I do is I like to show people my car, maybe even take them, like drive them around, let them experience it. Maybe even go on like a little road trip with them. I know it's been a little more difficult with, pandemic and all, but just letting them experience it and see what it's like to, to travel with it gives them an idea of like, what they can expect if they were to, get an electric car.
Yeah, well, on several occasions with my car, I've taken my 4 friends that I get together with maybe once a year as a reunion, and they all live in scattered parts of the country. But a couple times here, we'd go out and play golf, or we'd go to to the coast at some park. Anyway, what's funny is we do these trips, and when you're going to go play golf, you got 2 hours. Now I found golf courses where it's 2 to 4 hours. Well, I can plug it into level 2 and it charges, and it's free. And there's a place in the city I did that, and it's free. And we go to the coast near Golden Gate Bridge at the beach, and it's free. And when you go up to wine country, my God, the wineries, how many of them have the solar panels on the covered parking lots? And you want to walk around, they have little hikes and learn about plants or go in and taste. But it's free charging. And so now gas is $5 a gallon. And I think that makes people think.
Cecilia said the one thing about let people try, drive around in your car. It occurred to me that years ago, this isn't boasting, but I look back and in the last 23 years, we've been driving EVs for 17 of those 23 years. So I didn't consider us early adopters, but we just wanted them, and so my friends and I would go hiking every weekend. And I would use, originally it was the Honda EV Plus, and then the Nissan Leaf after that. Every one of those friends now has out EV'd me. That is, they all have 2 EVs in their garage. And that was the experience of driving around in my car. And they realized, we were on the top of Skyline Boulevard, and it said, only have 8 miles range left. And we're coming back from Half Moon Bay. And I dropped the first person off at his house and it says, okay, you have 50 miles range left. And at that point, they all said, oh, that's how it works. And so this whole thing on range anxiety disappeared. So ignore this. I know how far I can go. They have Teslas, they have Leafs, they have Bolts. And I was surprised when I go to their garages now and I find they have 2 EVs in their garages.
Mhm.
So
I mentioned going to the Chevy dealer for my Bolt upgrade. Now I'm learning here that if you show anything on Zoom, it's reversed, right?
Backwards, new roads,
But
but so dries.
as an owner, I get the magazine.
I'm here to talk.
Oh.
And you need to let me talk first.
Oh, this is my spouse.
I'm Alicia, and I was an earlier adopter than I would have felt like, because I had this guy, and I used to tell people, well, I love driving my Leaf. I don't have to worry about anything because I have a research associate as my spouse, and I used to go, hey, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I do? I was thinking, I don't know if you guys are trying to find like talking points for presentations, but it sounds like you're also just talking about interacting with people. The story I was going to tell is that I've discovered that when I went to the city and I charged the car in San Francisco, not too, I don't know where I was, near Sutro Tower, they have these, it's the Electrify America charging stations that have been put in places where there's never been stuff like that. So I was at a Safeway in San Francisco parking lot 2 different times, and people were looking at the chargers because they were new. And there were people who are not like, they're not upper middle class white people who are already hearing about electric cars and everything like that. And so I started chatting with people because of course my car's still charging, and the points that I tell people that are just like casually walking by when I'm charging, or, a lot of the points you guys made, but also the Leaf is very fun to drive. The Leaf is built really well for the batteries being low. It handles better than almost any car I've ever driven. It's fun. So, it's inexpensive, it's fun, but also the point for people who've never driven a hybrid or an electric is you've got so much torque at the low end. And I love to tell the story of people that some guy will be in a truck behind me and he's on my tail. You stupid. I can hear the voice in my head. That eco lady with her gray hair, she's in my way. And we get to a light and I go next to him at the light. And then the light changes and I leave him in the dust because of course I have torque at the low end. And I love to tell people that who don't know it, because they're like, oh, there is a level of fun about the cars that you don't know until you drive them and learn them. So that's what I wanted to share.
When you're talking about that one, Caleb and I had worked on deploying buses, and the bus company got nervous because they recognized what the torque was like, and they go, oh shit, we're going to go through a lot of tires. Because the drivers were having too much
That's
fun.
a really good point. I really love that. I think that impresses people with how much fun and how much acceleration you have when you have to pull into traffic, all that stuff, or get by somebody because the road's going to narrow. That's always great to have that. And EVs almost universally have it.
So I have a question for probably Tesla drivers. My one friend has a Dodge van that she can sleep in and everything else, and she lives up in Tahoe. And her concern is 4-wheel drive. And I keep telling her, you can get just about any EV these days with 4-wheel drive because they'll put 2 motors in for you. Is that really true? And are they going to change anything? Anybody run into any cars or vehicles where they talk about the winter and how they handle that?
Yeah, they do a lot of testing in the winter. A lot of cars, all-wheel drive or independent. Each wheel has a different. That's
different motor.
All kinds of variations. This Ford that's coming out, it's going to be Rivian's supposed to be unbelievable out in the wild. So there's lots of good options.
Yeah.
I think, for people who say, I need, a gas car because I go to Tahoe, that just doesn't make any sense to me anymore. People don't go to Tahoe that much, and when they do go, they can take their electric car like you did, Jerry. And like you said, I love the idea that your range diminishes in a gas car, it diminishes in an electric car, but electric cars now have great range and they have all-wheel drive options. Definitely the Tesla's got all-wheel drive options. I think of it more like, a Subaru driver or something where it's somehow slightly better than a pickup truck. Pickup trucks are horrible in the snow when they're 4-wheel drive and they have nothing in the back. And people just drive them anyway, even though they're horrible in the snow. When I lived in Montana, we put rocks in the backs of our trucks. And people would drive around in their vans with rocks in the back and whatever. And I don't know, people just kind of develop these opinions about what they need. They're based on, I'm not really sure what, but yeah. So if someone like is really thinking, I don't want to get stuck, I think electric cars are great at not getting stuck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
but
said something else there too, which is interesting, is that in the mountains, the efficiency thing in the EV, the EVs are efficient, period. And they have to be because they carry so little energy with them compared to gasoline vehicles. But in the mountains, when you're going up and down the mountain, everybody has the impact of going up the mountain and losing energy. But going back down the mountain with a gasoline powered vehicle, okay, you can coast down the mountain. But with the EV, you can coast down the mountain and you can put fuel back into your battery at the same time. And I don't know how to, I don't know. I've tried to explain that to people. And you talk about regen or whatever else. And it's not a tactic that has worked for me, as far as I know.
It's kind of like, yeah, I guess I got it when I realized, how minimal the Prius would pick up power going down a hill compared to like the Leaf, once I got the Leaf or whatever. But yeah, you've got a good, trying to come up with a metaphor for that would be great.
Well, it should we put in here tactics at work? You don't have to put rocks in your truck bed.
In Maine, we use cinder blocks.
Right.
They're nice and square.
Yeah, they fit better in the back of a square Volvo.
Extra sand is best.
And maybe
Yeah,
they're
David,
more available in Maine. In Montana, we just didn't even have cinder blocks.
David, jump in.
So I did want to.
Wait, the other David. Sorry.
Oh,
David Heacock got you first. Yeah.
I did go to the Napa event and spent almost
Oh, you
3
did?
hours just talking to people. So one of the things I found, which doesn't apply to most of you, is to have a hook. All you have to do is put the Avani out there and everybody comes over and starts talking to you. So now you got people talking to you. I think my next thing is, I agree with a lot of you that one of the first things I do is try to figure out what it is they need, what their needs are. Because I had a guy at a shop in Napa that told me to call this guy because he was talking about converting. And one of the first things I found out, he said, I only need a 10 or 20 mile range car. Well, some people say 300, some people say 10 or 20. And so you have to establish what their needs are, I think, to begin with. But I also like the other thing is I think a lot of things, here's what we would tell people, but I think you got to ask people what it is they want. And I think you got to ask them, have you ever driven an electric vehicle? And I think this is what some of you have pointed out. And most people say that I talked to for 3 hours said, no, they haven't. I said, well, I'd recommend driving one or finding somebody that, could give you a ride or let you actually drive the thing. I don't want anybody driving the Avani. It's too quirky, but they should go drive one. And I think that would change a lot of people's minds on how they feel about electric vehicles. They are, like you've pointed out here, is a lot of fun. They're really interesting, and you can do, they're just different, and people have to experience that. The other thing is, I think the discussion of savings, we say, well, gas went up to X number and all that. I think in my talking to people, and I just did a calculation here the other day because I charged my car up at 115 miles, and I figured out what it would cost me to drive that, save 115 miles with our Saturn hybrid. And for 115 miles at an average fuel cost now of about $4.43 here in California, I can save like $15.80 something cents. And I think when people, that's almost 25%. In my Leaf, I used to say it was about 30%. But when you do dollars and cents and talk, some people kind of glaze over, but other people understand when you talk efficiencies and you talk dollar and cents costs. If you in just a little over 100 miles of driving, you can save almost $16. I think people go, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I do agree that too many people think, oh, I have to go to a charging station. I had one lady said, you know, where do I charge and how far can I drive? And when I start asking her what she needs it for, I say, you don't even need to go to a gas station anymore. Just charge it at home kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I don't think people really realize
No.
that. So
That-
anyway,
that-
that's
Yeah, that's an
my two-
interesting number because I just think about if I was to leave Sebastopol, go to San Francisco and back again, it's not 150, let's call it 160 mile round trip. So
Yeah.
I think of the toll, but I never think about the, $14, $15 worth of fuel and other costs associated with taking the gas car.
I'm a retired engineer, and so I'm kind of a little bit of a nerd on efficiencies and stuff. And I have so we have a 2013 RAV4 EV, but we also have a 2008 Highlander hybrid, which we drive gently and not hardly at all anymore. But I did a calculation on that but I factored in the IM test I have to do every year, and I factored in the oil change every year I have to do, and gas, when gas was probably like $3 a gallon, and it was 15 or 16 cents a mile difference. And so for every mile I drove my RAV car, my electric car, I was saving 15 cents. So I think, David, your numbers are right in the ballpark there.
Yeah.
And now it'd be quite a bit more, probably be 20 or 22 cents because the gas is so much more expensive. So
Hey, David Harris, you want to jump in?
Well, I mentioned earlier, we got our first Leaf in 2011, but just in the last month or so, I read a blog post about somebody complaining about the fact that the Nissan didn't have battery conditioning. So there were some in a hotter climate and they had issues because the battery got too hot.
Mhm.
And Jerry, you've gone to Tahoe, but not in the snow season. I mean,
No.
have you heard anything about people having issues in a colder place like Tahoe because the Leaf does not have any battery conditioning? The Bolt does, and it tells you what percentage of energy is used, which is always zero in this climate for battery conditioning. But I had never heard anybody complaining about the Leaf not having battery conditioning. But I think there are temperature extremes where it may be an issue.
I could see in the Arizona issue early on with Leafs that they did have a lot of issues. But I've heard even Teslas have, I mean, the Tesla people can talk about it, but even Teslas in, really bad winter conditions are going to lose a certain percentage of their range. But you could say that about gas vehicles. I mean, talk about that too. I don't typically get that question much, maybe because we live in California, it doesn't matter, but.
Hey, Cecilia created the little scratch here, and I thought this was an interesting one. She had one set of slides said tactics that work, and one set of slides says tactics that don't work. So what doesn't work? We have a little bit of time left. I'd like to get some doesn't works.
You're saving the earth.
You're saving the earth.
Don't batteries pollute?
Don't
Doesn't
batteries pollute?
Yeah, it takes all these.
By the way, they don't, but
Oh, well,
Yeah.
Well,
This is something people say. This is something that
Right.
people believe
The
that is
objection.
false.
and I've had that argument, and I bring out the articles, and they'd say, "Well, that's really not definitive. I mean, it's got research, the R&D, and it got the numbers. No, they do pollute. I know they pollute."
Yes.
But it seems like we need another little slide that says tactics that don't work, but also myths that are false, or whatever.
Right.
Well, that would
Yeah.
take a whole
Well,
slide deck, though.
The myth thing is what I wanted to bring up is that Chevrolet's magazine actually has EV myth busting. And so they have the classic, there's nowhere to charge, charging an EV takes too long, EVs don't offer enough range. And Chevrolet has put that in the magazine. So I was down there at the dealer and I picked it up because I get it in the mail. And I was talking to the sales guys and the service guys, and they hadn't even looked at the fact that the Chevrolet has given them the article with the Mythbuster answers in it.
The batteries cost too much to replace.
Mm.
That was early on. Everybody was, and I don't know if some people still say that, well, I'm going to have to replace it in 3 years and it's going to cost me $20,000. Well, that's obviously not the case.
Um,
Like I did have some people talk about that, and I said, I'm not sure they know how long these batteries will last. And
don't
they asked
yet, yeah.
about my car, and I said, well, these batteries are, I don't know how old. They could at least be 5 to 10 years old already, and I can get 120 miles of range, and that's more than most people need. So
Well, the
sort of-
guarantees now, standard in California is, I think, 150,000 miles in 8 years.
yeah.
I'll say that
Mm.
putting down other brands of cars in order to convince people to get the brand that you think is better, or pushing your referral code doesn't necessarily work.
My friends are doing that all the time because they're all telling me I have to have a Tesla.
Well, if you keep driving a Tahoe, you do.
Aptera. Buy an Aptera.
Well, another thing not to do, because I'm kind of a nerd myself, and so
So-
too technical isn't good.
Getting too technical. Yeah.
Yeah, don't assume that as an early adopter, everybody wants to hear all the cool things about being an early adopter.
I think I've found myself being dismissive of people's concerns that they won't be able to drive all the way through. Like I like to drive 7 hours straight, or, so being a little dismissive of you should just enjoy a good lunch on your way to LA or something. And then I think another thing that kind of came up was we get a little excited about telling our earliest stories about how we ran into problems. And so it's kind of like trying to be disciplined about not talking about the things that they're not going to run into,
That's good.
yeah.
Cool. Yep.
Another myth that comes up to me is one that people from the non-West Coast area talk about, because they get power from coal, is that saying, if I buy an electric car, I'm just going to be powered from coal. And I mean, to me, we can dismiss that, but we can also say, well, is it better to burn, gasoline, which has tons of chemicals in it, less efficiently than burning coal, which does have chemicals in it, but it's much more efficient. So I don't know, there are ways of combating that. But
actually,
that one,
major way of combating that one was an early argument. If you have an electric vehicle, as the grid gets more and more efficient, your vehicle becomes more and more efficient. If you use a gasoline powered vehicle, it will never become more efficient.
Right.
I think
will
you
always get less
acknowledge acknowledging that might have been true for some states in the past, if you were to do that math, but is not true anymore.
There is no state. I mean, you're right, Sonia. There's states which are close, but there are no states left where the EV is more polluting than the gasoline powered.
Mm-hmm. And most of us are not talking to people in Kentucky.
Right. Well, actually, Colorado used to be the worst, which was
Right.
and it's no longer. I mean, they have very much changed their power, their grid.
Yeah, some people, again, this is like vaccines. It says some people get put off because they think the government and the powers to be are forcing us all into electric vehicles. And I hear that comment a number of times, and I try to say, well, you got to think of what your needs are and how it's going to affect you and make your life better, and forget about, what the government's trying to do. But they looked at that as a negative sometimes.
Yeah.
Those are the anti-vaxxers who talk to you that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But the other way to address
their concerns. I mean, I don't like big government. I'm sorry. And I don't like them dictating to me what I got to do. And if they feel that way, then you have to be able to counteract that with trying to redirect their thinking somewhere else.
Yeah, I can just tell them they don't have to take advantage of the incentives. Somebody else will.
Yeah.
Well, this
That's better.
dealing with those kinds of people, we know who we're talking about. Anyway, so-called Republicans and whatever. Get them to, if there was some way to have them drive an EV, they might get a kick out of what David Harris's partner was talking about. Didn't she give an example? Yeah. And it's like the one I may have mentioned in the past. I live out in the sticks, and a lot of the roads I'm driving are the slow roads through the curving and up and down and around. And I get the white pickup truck behind me all the time, right? You've seen them, thousands of them. And they're tailgating because they want to go 50 miles an hour on this curvy road where you probably should go 35. I get to the stop sign and I purposely take off, and I get to the next curve about a quarter mile ahead of them. The EV goes so fast when you want it to, and there's nobody around here. If it's nighttime, I wouldn't do that.
Well, I just wanted to do.
I get way ahead of them.
Yeah,
and
well, everybody who has not done what Bill said just now, raise their hand. Right.
I'm kind of like giving the finger to the tailgaters. That's all.
Yeah, we all do it, Bill. We all do it on a regular basis.
I'm just saying maybe those people who also share a lot of these, those assholes kind of thing, when they talk about Democrats or AOC or something, maybe they should get out and try to drive one of these, and it might help. But again, that's hard to do.
All right, so we're at the end of our time. I'm going to push it forward. I'm really bad with most of these things. Actually, I'm sorry, but we didn't get to this one. When there is no good solution, we should have had that discussion too. I forgot about that slide. But I'm going to push this forward. I hadn't changed any of the cool links. If you guys find more cool links for us to work with, David Harris sent me an article which I want to think about, which is talking about there's not enough electricity for us to have all of the EVs. And
right.
There's an article recently in Press Democrat on the same thing that DJ read. And I think that's a good discussion to have sometime too, as to why people think that's the case. And I think it has to do with thinking what the perspective is today. Still looking for a speaker for next month. If somebody wants to put something together, that would be terrific. And otherwise, I will see everybody November 13th. Great. And if somebody else, by the way, if somebody else wants to do the program this month, I'm happy to hand it over and let somebody else do the program. It's now been 3 years that I've been doing the program. I'm starting to feel like Alan, because we said, I've been president for 5 years, somebody else be president. And we said, okay, we'll share the load. But, except for Sonia doing one and Alan doing one, I've done all the programs for 3 years. So I look forward to other members coming along saying, hey, I'll do the program and I'll say something different. Any case.
Just a comment. I thought this meeting went excellently for me. I was very engaged. I enjoyed it very much. So doing this kind of thing is just fine.
Okay, good. And Sonia had actually suggested that several years ago that we should alternate our meetings as to, we have a speaker, we're going to cover a topic, and that'd be great too. So if somebody wants to send a topic for the next meeting, that would be good too.
Yep. And I had suggested some type of book club, so that might end up being what you get if we don't get anything else. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, everybody, have a good month, and I hope to see some of you in between the months. All right.
Gary.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.